Welcome to our Academic Affairs Committee meeting. It's April 9th at 5:32 p.m. We're having a couple technical difficulties, which we are working on as we speak to ensure all our participants are able to serve in webinar roles today. I'm excited to get us started. While we have a lot today, I do not think we will have the marathon we had the last time we came together. So hopefully we can move through this, and we have a number of items to talk about tonight. If everyone's okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. We have 5 agenda items this evening, our curriculum resource adoptions, pending board motions that the board should anticipate seeing in the next couple of weeks. Next week, I guess, actually. We're going to talk about an administrative professional learning we've been working on all year. We'll talk about proposed calendars for the next 3 school years and flexible instructional days. That's what you have to look forward to this evening. As I love to do, is we've brought to you not only our building principals again this evening, but also I have asked 2 of our faculty members to be here to speak about specific projects. Ms. Kate Whitaker returns again this month after surviving last month's marathon. She did come back, and I've invited Mrs. Carol Breen to join us to talk about an ELA project at the middle school. So please, I just so that you know who is here with us. And to all of you, welcome and thank you for being here in your evening time. I want to sort of talk about the curriculum resource adoptions. Last time we were together, we did talk about this extensively, and I just want to remind members of our school board that when we bring you a curriculum resource adoption, we have already done our due diligence behind the scenes. We are in compliance with Board Policy 108, the adoption of textbooks. We have explained the process every time on our website for any family member or participant who wants to know. And we look at curriculum resource adoptions as part of curriculum review cycles. And as I said to you last time, there's a number of steps that happen when we do these projects. I will add an asterisk this evening that this process is only slightly different when there are really targeted projects or 2 dual enrollment classes, which is tonight's case, as Ms. Whitaker will talk about in a minute, and we'll talk about with AP Psychology. When we are talking about dual enrollment, it's not like we're choosing from 27 different products. The universities have strong opinions about what they'd like as the textbook in order to grant that dual enrollment credit. So Dr. Scragg and Dr. Rittenhouse and Ms. Whitaker will talk a little bit about that. But we are still bringing them to you for approval, but knowing that unlike last time where we talked about all the different things we looked at and how we landed on a specific recommendation, sometimes in these examples, it's a little bit different. So tonight, we definitely don't have that same level of search and find the best match for our district. This is a little different. And so I want to jump right in because I know your time is valuable. And so I want to talk a little bit about computer science at the high school. Dr. Scragg and Ms. Whitaker, I don't know if you already talked about it. If you want to talk a little bit about the course, we talked about it. That was approved course last time we were together. And this time we are recommending a purchase of starting out with Python. Ms. Whitaker, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So just a quick overview of computing for the humanities. This is a Python-based course geared towards social science humanities projects. So it is learning to program in Python, but the projects are geared towards those things. And as mentioned, the process for finding this book is really short. It is required by the university. We are using their curriculum. I have to be trained on their curriculum, and I have to use their book. And that is starting out with Python. I have experience with that author with previous reference books, and I do like his style. So it is one that would have been a contender either way, but we don't really get a choice in this one.
So at Ms. Whitaker's recommendation, we're seeking to purchase 30 student texts and online recesses for her and or any other instructor. Right now, that's her. And so that comes to a cost of $5,044.92. Dr. Scragg and Dr. Rittenhouse, anything else you wanted to share? Members of our board of school directors, any questions for us?
No questions.
Okay to proceed with that as a board motion for Tuesday?
Yes, I'm in agreement.
Thanks, Kate, for all your hard work. We appreciate it.
Yeah, this is the beginning of a really exciting partnership with Kate. So thanks so much for your work
Very
on that.
exciting. Yeah, very exciting.
And while I welcome you to join for the rest of the meeting, I also understand if you want to excuse yourself after that.
All right.
Have a great night, Kate. Thank you. Our next product that we want to talk about is also in the high school in our social studies department. The AP determined a time to update and revise their AP curriculum for the AP psychology course. We got that notification April 1st, I think it came through. And so they also are very clear. Dr. Scragen will add to this what they expect in terms of the resources, but you know by its name, Meyer Psychology for the AP course, that they may have already made some decisions. And so we are seeking to make that purchase for a cost of $6,267.87. Dr. Scragen, can you offer a little more insight?
Sure. This is a book that's actually, it was reviewed by our current AP psychology instructor, Ashley Fizzarelli. She's familiar with this author and the textbook, and she also wholeheartedly embraced this. And I was a portion of those conversations going back and forth between her and Dr. Johnson's office. And yes, being a former AP teacher, when they give you a list of one book to choose from, you kind of have to go with that.
Any questions or concerns from our members of our school board? And okay to proceed with placing that item on our agenda for Tuesday? Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you. Third is an exciting project that we have been working on as a part of curriculum review, also in the high school and in our English language arts department. And one of the things that I've actually spent a lot of time talking about today is the idea of independent reading in our English courses. The middle school has done a really successful job of integrating independent reading into their classrooms and really allocating instructional time to create a culture building on the success from elementary into middle school for independent and sustained reading during the school day, really saying that that's an important component to create lifelong readers. At the high school, that has not been in place with consistent fidelity over the years. Students are expected to read, but there wasn't necessarily time allocated in their classrooms to do so. And so as a part of our curriculum revision and their professional learning that the high school department has been working on, they've worked with the library to really increase the number of available resources for independent reading, specifically that's aligned to what's happening in each of the grade levels. But they would like to also increase the use of these materials in their core classrooms. And they'd like to start to create classroom libraries, which sounds like something we have taken for granted was in place. But across the overall high school ELA department, there are not classroom libraries in place. And so they are seeking to purchase for each grade level a collection for 9th, for 10th, for 11th, for 12th for their teachers who are teaching those courses. And so that comes at what I think is a reasonable cost of $13,169.09. And that's multiple class sets at each of the targeted grade levels. Question, Dr. Scragen, Dr. Rittenhouse, anything you want to add?
I just think it gives, student choice, student voice in what they want to read. And while we have a wonderful library, it's great having these well-stocked miniature libraries within each classroom. I applaud the vision of Jen McCaslin and the department.
I was just going to add too that the selection that the department looked at, a very diverse, and I'm like, God, I need to read that. I need to read that. So I'm really very pleased with the selections they've chosen with student input.
Any questions from the members of our school board about this recommended supplemental material?
I don't have any questions, but I just really wanted to chime in and say, I think this is really excellent to encourage students to read, and especially in the confines of their classroom with teachers in an environment that's open and welcoming. Every student may not go into the library, it's just larger or whatever, but they can really access that book material, put it in your hands, feel it, touch it, which cannot be replaced fully by any other media. So I think this is fantastic. I just wanted to say that.
Thanks, Mrs. Green.
I just
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just had a question about
Sure.
like how the Perfection Learning, is that the company that puts out the text? And then approximately how many texts per grade level? Like, what does that look like? What does the library look like?
Well, that's a great question. Each of the resources is a little bit different, and it builds on a core resource that the librarian has already purchased for each of the grade levels. Again, continuing to diversify the collection to have a wider range and variation. And I wish I could tell you right off the top of my head, but right now that number is out of my head exactly how many books are in each grouping. But Perfection Learning was the one that they felt really provided a wide-ranging voice and perspective. They thought it provided reasonable and interesting titles that would captivate young adolescents as they were navigating through school, and they felt like they provided assets and aligned to the focus that they were having at each curriculum level as they were planning their new courses.
Okay, thanks.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, give a little bit more information about it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Anything else? Dr. Teretuski, I'll get you that number of how many books are in each of the collections. I just can't, I could click on the button, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's totally fine. No worries.
Hey, Dr. Johnson, it's Eileen Bell. I had a similar question to what she had, just about kind of grade levels and what that encompassed. So you already addressed that, so thank you.
Great, thanks, Mrs. Bell. I'm sorry if I already asked this question. Any concerns about placing this on the agenda for Tuesday night? Great,
No.
thank you. Elementary and middle school K through 8 math. So funny thing, and I mentioned this a little bit a couple weeks ago when last time we came together, that we're still sort of recalibrating our curriculum review cycles based on coming out of COVID. We anticipated several years ago, prior to COVID, that we would be ready for mathematics revision about this time. But unfortunately, as you know, everything sort of got delayed as a result of the dedication and figuring out and navigating COVID. So what we need to do is our subscription to the K through 8 mathematics program Envision that we adopted in 2016, 2017, is expiring. And so we needed to make an important decision. So I'm going to talk about K5 first with Mr. Spiker and Dr. Markle, and then I'm going to come to K6 through 8 in 1 second. So when I brought this to Dr. Markle and Mr. Spiker, and we had a reality check, because you'll remember that a few weeks ago I was here telling you about our brand new ELA curriculum. We decided amongst the three of us that we did not, in good conscience, want to make a lot of changes to mathematics while we're implementing new ELA. We thought that our teachers could only have so much bandwidth, and as generalists, teachers who teach all subjects in K through 4, and then our 5th grade math teachers, we felt like it was in our best interest to just sustain and continue the good work we've been doing in Envision and mathematics for the next 2 years, while we begin the curriculum review process for that, but after we get started with our ELA rollout. Dr. Markle, Mr. Spiker, did I capture our thoughts?
Yes, I think you did. I think the only other thing I would add, as well, I feel like the elementary literacy curriculum market has changed a bunch in the past few years, in a way that I think our new selection is going to reflects that. My understanding is there's not that same shift in math. I envision, like it's a fine, solid program when we purchased it. Before, it's still a fine, solid product. Obviously, there are going to be some newer things that have some new bells and whistles, but there hasn't been a wholesale shift as there has been in ELA. So waiting a couple of years doesn't really put us behind the curve in any way. If we're waiting for ELA, I would feel differently, but I think waiting for math makes total sense for all the reasons you mentioned, Dr. Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Spiker. That's a really important component, and you're exactly right. That's one of the things we talked about also. Dr. Markle?
I mean, the only other thing I would just add too is, we'll look at math data and review and look at, instructional practices and things, but we really do feel that this resource is solid to help us continue to support that, especially in terms of the use of formative assessments that happen daily. That really helps teachers make decisions day to day about who needs a little help, or a small group in a reteaching group, or who can be extended right then and there. And so that's the only other thing I'd add too.
Thanks, Dr. Markle. Are there any questions from the members of our Board of School Directors? Okay. We basically made the same decision about middle school, K 6 through 8, is that we've been working on a number of projects, as I mentioned to you, science and ELA, which we'll talk about again in a minute. And so the middle school science department actually felt a little differently. Envision has provided an updated product in the Envision 2024. And so we had a demonstration of that actually a year ago for elementary. And then this year we brought them back to take a look at it for middle school. Dr. Fuller, do you want to talk a little bit about how your team decided that we wanted to stick with Envision for a couple more years, but try out their new product?
Sure. One of the things that's different in our structure from elementary school is that, our math teachers are dedicated math teachers who have the ability to focus on the bells and whistles of a math product without also having to juggle everything else across the curriculum that they're trying to work with their students on. So we have 9 teachers who are solely math teachers, and they want to explore that. They're very forward thinking. And so the consensus of the group was to sort of push forward and try this new product. When they saw it, they felt even more strongly about that. They are really excited about the ways that it integrates with a little bit better than the 2016 product with the other tools that we use. And so upcoming with Schoology and with our Google Docs, the integration of the materials from Envision really kind of dovetails really nicely into the classroom where it was a little bit clunkier before. Also, it's sort of the real-time data that's available about students that we can extract from that system when the students do their work online. It allows for all kinds of things like grouping within the classroom, homo and heterogeneous grouping that we have not had the same kind of ability to do before. And so they were turned on by a lot of the bells and whistles of this new software. And because they have the bandwidth to do it, they're looking to explore it. It requires some work on their part. They're going to lose all of sort of the pre-settings that they've done and all of the customization that they've done. When they adopt this product, that all goes away, and they're going to have to redo it on the new platform. But they're really willing to do it because of what they saw convinced them that this would be the better product for them. So we're excited about it. They're excited about it. And it's coming next year.
Thanks, Dr. Fuller. Any other questions about that? Just to be clear, that is our grade level mathematics program. That does not include algebra, geometry when taught at the high school. They have a different product that they use for those 2 courses. So this is the grade level mathematics program, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
It's every math course that has a number instead of a name.
Well said. Any concerns around taking this recommendation forward? Or any questions for us? Great. That's a 2-year license, and then that will buy us enough time to really dig in and see what we think about the new 2024 product, to help inform our decisions as we get to the end of this 2-year license. So this time next year, we'll be well into digging into the data and looking at alternative products for 2 years from now.
Is that
All right.
2 years for both of those products, Dr. Johnston?
Say that again,
K-5?
Dr. Taratusky, I didn't hear you.
Is that 2 years for both of the levels, the
Yes.
K-5 and the middle school? Okay.
Yes,
Mhm.
thank you.
Sure.
And last but not least, we have been doing, you are well aware at this point, our middle school ELA revision project has been well underway. Last year, we spent a lot of time looking at the function and structure of our ELA program at the middle school, digging into the data, starting to draft out the new courses of which you were aware, and we approved, members of this committee who were with us this time last year, approved those courses last spring. And then we actually began looking at products and resources. Most of last spring, we spent some of our time looking at products. At that time, we were not able to land on one that everyone felt like was a good use, and there was some real disparate feelings about the learning needs of sixth graders versus eighth graders. And so, Dr. Fuller, you want to talk a little bit about where we went from there to here?
Sorry, I was muted. One of the things that we felt strongly about was in all things is trying to smooth that transition for our incoming sixth graders as much as we possibly can, right? So we feel it's to our benefit to think about how we can make sixth grade a little bit more like fifth grade and make fifth grade a little bit more like sixth grade. And so it's been kind of nice to know that our upcoming fifth grade class has been departmentalized and is used to moving classes, right? So that when they come to the middle school, that doesn't become a culture shock for them. Sort of in the same way, we were thinking about how can we introduce them to the rigors of middle school reading and writing, and that transition, right, from learning to read to reading to learn in a way that's rigorous but familiar to them. And so I felt strongly about having a product to sort of guide that transition into the middle school. And we looked at a bunch, like Dr. Johnston said. This year, our sixth grade team looked at Amplify and had a totally different reaction to that product than I've seen. I hadn't seen people as excited about a textbook product as the sixth grade team was this year. So, I think just the one thing that I will say, and not to steal Carol's thunder because she's going to speak after me, but I think the one thing that I like about it is that this product comes with a 100-day program rather than 100. It also has a 175-day program. But I like the 100-day program because it allows us to use the textbook to make sure that our students are encountering the standards in a regimented way, in a way that they're used to, but also allows us to introduce some of that freedom for students and teachers and autonomy for students and teachers around the curriculum that we prize so much in our writing-based curriculum. So that's what I really like about it. But I brought Carol along to talk about all the rest of the things that really, really kind of grabbed the attention of our sixth grade team. So Carol, you ready?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I without repeating everything that has been said, when we looked at it, and I'm just one of the team here, we were really excited, and it was a big plus for us knowing that the fifth grade was already on board with doing it. It made it even more appealing to kind of strengthen that transition, like Dr. Fuller had mentioned. But there were some really specific things that we liked about this program. The first thing that really stood out for us that they really made clear was how research-based it was. So we were excited about that. We liked the idea that it's been tested, that it's based on the data, because we've spent a year looking at all of our own data here. So we really liked that component about it. Kind of jumping on Dr. Fuller's coattails here, we liked the structure of it, but at the same time that the teacher's personality can still kind of come through too, because you can tailor it to meet your own style in the classroom, but it also gives a guideline to a sub who's coming in and may have to teach on the fly, because everything is there. It's really laid out nicely and really clear. And we liked that part about it as well. The other thing that really was obvious was how differentiated it was. That's a big push here, as I know it is everywhere. And it really challenges the learners, but at the same time has components that you can use for kids who are just learning English, who might have learning differences, who have special learning needs. There were ways to address those. There were really cool ways to access the kids in different ways. So it just really was a nice feature about that program. One of the things that I really liked about it, that we all really liked about it, that no matter where the kids are, they have access to a reading library that tops out over 700. So they can access that here at school. They can access it on the go at home. If they're stuck for a book, there's always a book option there. And with our real focus on building readers, that was a really nice feature about this program that we liked. It just ticked a lot of the boxes that we had been looking for. This seemed to have a lot of those areas covered.
Well said, Mrs. Breen. Yeah, I think the team was really excited and they saw this as an opportunity to continue to deepen their practice, I think in some ways that were advantageous in that you could think about some different topics. They were all real, it's really designed for middle schoolers. I think it's got interesting ideas and opportunities that speak to middle school, particularly sixth grade brains and the way they like to, what they like to talk about, and really integrates that science of reading, which we've been talking about a lot in structured literacy, right into grade 6.
Yeah, we had a really neat presentation today. I want to read some of that stuff that they put up there. Really high interest stuff.
Yeah, they really make it engaging, I have to say. And what's really nice about it is you can do it online, you can do it with paper and pencil, you can really mesh the two to kind of appeal to as many learning styles as possible, which is nice.
Agreed. Members of our school board, what other questions can we answer for you about this product and this adoption for grade 6?
I guess I have the question about the 8-year agreement. Can you talk a little bit about the decision to go that long with a program?
The 8-year agreement put us in line with our K-5 adoption, which is also through Amplify, as it turned out, different product, but they are connected. And that is also an 8-year adoption. In the past, we had done some 6-year adoptions, and what ends up happening is exactly like what happened with Savas. If you hit any hiccup along the way, you're racing to sort of add some time versus having time to get to know the product, evaluate its effectiveness, and then determine whether or not it's the right product or something else the years after. So 8 years put us in line so that it would get adopted, 6th grade would get adopted and reviewed at the same time as K-5.
Thanks.
Of course. Any other questions? So our recommendation is to put this on the agenda next week for $50,000, $50,192.64. The numbers were escaping me on Tuesday night. Is that okay with everybody?
That's okay with me.
Thanks, Amy.
That's fine. Mhm.
All right. Thanks, Mrs. Breen, for being here. I appreciate you. Thanks for all your help. And last but not least, speaking of the 8-year quote, is a great transition. So I told you when I saw you last month, when we were presenting all those projects, that I had caused a fuss that I really wanted an 8-year agreement for our products. I think it's the right number. And at that time, the science producer, HMH, did not have an 8-year agreement for its science program. And so we had sort of fussed a little, I'm not gonna lie, just being appropriate, right? I pushed back pretty hard, and up until our time that we saw you, and in fact, board approval, they were not able to come through. The night of board approval, the next morning, they called and said that they heard our feedback and added an 8-year option. And so the additional 2 years actually, so this group approved and the board approved a recommendation. This is about $57,305.15 more than what we talked about the last time I saw you. And so our recommendation is that we do move to the 8-year agreement. I've reviewed this with Mrs. Green, our business manager, Mrs. Green. And so she felt strongly that this group just needed to be comfortable with that and make a decision on whether or not you thought you wanted it to have full board approval again, or whether this group's agreement is sufficient. She's fine either way, depending on the sort of what this group recommended.
I mean, I'll say I'm in agreement with that. I just, given the amount of work that goes into looking at programs and revising things, you've got a lot of programs that are coming up in the next, like at that 8-year cycle. Not that not that I will be here then, but just kind of looking out for that. And if the team is comfortable with taking that on, then that seems reasonable.
Thanks, Dr. Taratuski.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone feel like we need to take it back to the full board, or you're comfortable with me proceeding with support from this group?
I think I'm good with it. I don't think that the full board would have
Yeah,
questions, but
I'm also
okay with it.
comfortable.
And I agree.
Okay, great. I appreciate the support. Thank you very much. I'm glad they came through with us. I think it'll work better for our teachers. It was a concern to me. I think 6 years sometimes goes really fast. It sounds like a big number now, but when you're in the middle of it, by the time you're comfortable with it, 6 years, it's fast.
mhm.
The next two items are just two other board motions that are coming forward on Tuesday, and I just wanted this group to be aware of them so you weren't taken by surprise. I know Dr. Yannicone will provide an overview, as she always does, of the upcoming board motions in the meeting, but I thought I wanted to make sure you all were aware. So that's for Linkit and for Renaissance. These are two products we've used for a number of years. Linkit is our comprehensive data warehouse. That is where we house all of the data analytics and information. Many of the reports I bring you about our achievement scores, that data is pulled from and extracted from Linkit. We upload information into Linkit. Some information is sent directly from the vendor, like Star, Renaissance, which we'll talk about in a minute. They also are the constructors of our benchmark, the Linkit benchmark assessments that we've been increasingly using. And so that is up for renewal. We renew it every year. This year's cost this year, the new costs for next year are $40,532. And so that board motion is slated to go on Tuesday night, pending approval from here. Any questions?
No questions? No.
Okay. Okay to move forward with writing a motion for that? Fantastic, thank you. And the last one on this one is Renaissance. You recall that we have used Renaissance for a good number of years. I think we're like at 6 or 7 years now that we have used the Star 360, what was Star 360 and is now Star Comprehensive Suite as a benchmarking assessment. In true disclosure, we are shifting around the way in which we used Star as we navigate these new curricular products that we've been talking about. But in the meantime, while we figure out sort of how we use Linkit, where we use Star, we are recommending another year of our agreement with Star and with Renaissance. And that includes the purchase of Freckle as a mathematics supplemental resource. And so that anticipated quote is $47,603.49. Again, an annual approval that we do. Any questions for me?
Do any of the curricula have benchmarks built into them?
Exactly the question, Dr. Taratuski. It is our understanding our new K-5 ELA program does have those benchmarks in it. But we were reticent to give up something familiar while we're also learning the new product when we don't yet have the training to know exactly what's in place. And so we wanted the flexibility to say, maybe we'll use Star for one more year, get comfortable with the curriculum, and then bring in the CKLA benchmarking in 25, 26. We just felt like we have a lot on our plate to integrate with this new change. And so this is one thing that we would not have to put on our teacher's lap, making decisions on a product we're not yet familiar with. But that's where we're headed to in our thinking.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions about that?
No questions, but Dr. Johnson, I just want to say how much, as a former elementary school teacher, I appreciate that you are aware of what you're putting on the teachers for each of these new programs and things, and that you're not trying to put more on them than you have to.
We're trying really hard, Mrs. Hubley, but as you know, it's complicated, and it is complicated. And I think our teachers are feeling that balance too. They want to do all the right things and we want to do it well. So I think we're trying to have a full plate of options, but carefully select a balanced approach where we can. Dr. Markle, Mr. Spiker, anything you want to add that I missed about that? Dr. Fuller, anything?
Nope, you covered it.
All right. Okay for that to move forward on Tuesday? Great. Thank you. And so the last item I want to keep our principals for is a little bit of a point of pride that I'd like to celebrate with all of you. Some really hard and great work by our administrative team this year on a paired walkthrough leadership project. One of the things you'll remember that we've been talking about is student achievement, right? We really want to look at teaching and learning and student achievement and what that looks like. But as we've started to expect that from our staff, we don't want to we understand we have a role as leaders in helping to support our teachers in their growth and development. And so this year, our administrative instructional cabinet, which is all the building principals, central office, and assistant principals, really came together to say, like, okay, but do we all define what quality and high quality teaching and learning looks like in the same kinds of ways? Our jobs, just as teachers are very isolated. We don't actually know what one another is looking at when they're looking at teaching and learning. We talk about it, but we don't all see it through shared eyes. So this year we created a paired walkthrough project where our administrative team would work collaboratively to do some work in order to help inform our leadership practices together. And so this year, we established a plan to really enhance teaching and learning through instructional leadership. And we've created we meet bi-weekly times for us to focus on developing our own skills as leaders to help turn that around with our faculty. And we really wanted to come to some common agreements about how teaching and learning are expressed and observed across our district. I'm going to ask our principals to talk about that a little bit more specifically in a second. And it sounds obvious, like, oh, good teaching, but it's been fascinating to listen to the ways in which we describe that, how we label it, and how we challenge one another in thinking about it. And so we wanted to use a consistent protocol to plan for these observations and reflections, and then schedule some time to debrief with one another on what we were seeing. This has been really helpful to us as an administrative team to think about how and in what way rigor and engagement coexist in classrooms, and ways we can help support our staff in further expanding and deepening those practices. And so once a month for the last 3 months, one is next week, we have been to each of the buildings. So we've all worked to get coverage in the buildings, and we all arrive to a school building together and buddy up and do a 90-minute visit into the classroom. Oh, I'm missing a slide. Anyway, a 90-minute visit into a building, where we do 3 targeted observations. We do a pre-meeting before we go. We find a buddy, we go to 3 different spaces, and then we debrief with our buddy for 10 minutes, and then we debrief as a whole instructional cabinet. And during that, we look for particular things. What's the learning space? What tasks have been assigned? What are the students actually doing? What does student engagement look like? And what does teachers' engagement look like? And then really taking it a layer deeper to take a look at what is the depth of knowledge being expected of our students when they're producing work. And then afterwards, we did work on this with our association, we sort of shared with them our purpose. And then one of the things we do is we leave them a note, thanking them for their time and noticing the good things that we saw going on. And then we come back together and debrief and reflect, really talking about what did student engagement and academic rigor look like in the spaces and places we went to. And then we share some feedback after the process. And so we've had some varied learnings, but before I share sort of the summary, I'm going to see if our principals want to talk about sort of their experience this year. Do I have a volunteer who'd like to kick it off?
Sure.
Dr. Rittenhouse. Oh, Dr. Marco, you're going to have to wait 1 second. Your elbow buddy, Dr. Rittenhouse, is going to go first.
So, I think just for me, having been, some of my colleagues, my principal colleagues have had experiences at different levels, at high school, middle school, elementary, middle school, et cetera. I haven't had that. I've been 9 through 12. So I think for me as a building leader, it was professionally rewarding for me to go to Erdenheim and to the middle school just to see what teaching, learning, student engagement looks like, at that level, at the elementary level and at the middle school level. to really see what students were doing, but to really just to kind of see those different levels that I wouldn't typically see. I wouldn't call Ben or Zach and say, I'm going to visit 3 classrooms for 45 minutes. I just wouldn't do it. Nobody would typically do it. So I like the fact that they're paired walkthroughs and that there's the teaching staff and students. I learned what the greatest common factor was, or GCF, which I did not know that acronym when I walked into class a couple weeks ago. And it just was really awesome to see the pride that the staff and the students had at the different levels. So it's been very rewarding for me at the high school.
Thanks, Chuck. Meg?
Well, in fact, don't forget, Enfield's next week, so I'm excited for you to come see the littlest
Can't wait.
ones
Yep.
as well. But I just want to echo that too. It's really nice to see the progression from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. And without this, I wouldn't have an opportunity to see what's happening at the high school or the middle school as well. And then I also think it's really powerful that we just have this dedicated time, because even what I'm observing in the high school or the middle school or at Erdenheim, then it just sparks my thinking about what's happening at my school. But I wouldn't be able to do that if I'm like doing all of the day-to-day principal things that's happening. And so just having that dedicated time. But I think also the most powerful piece is the collaboration afterwards among our team of like, what does that look like for you? How can we reshift or think about something or what maybe I didn't see? So it's been really, really impactful.
Thanks, Dr. Markle. Mr. Spiker?
I think to build on that, I think there are, it's like there are, we talk all the time about a bunch of things, including teaching and learning, but actually just like, having that like fresh context for the conversation, actually having just like been in a classroom, seen some teachers in action, just a whole different like kind of conversation for us as a team than reading an article, like you're looking at a spreadsheet of data, but all that's helpful, but it's a different kind of conversation and just sort of activates our thinking about our conversations in different like a way. And so I think it just like really helpful just to be engaged in those like deep conversations about the most important part of our job, which is teaching and learning. So that's been great. And then just like as a side note, as somebody who's new to the district, just super helpful for me just to get context for what happens in all of our buildings. So when I'm talking to a 5th grade parent and they're like, oh, I heard middle school is X, or how much of a change is that? I have some context that I can give a halfway informed answer in a way that I couldn't have done 3 months ago.
Great point. We hadn't really talked about that, but that is an unexpected outcome. Dr. Fuller, how would you like to sort of wrap up the discussion?
I mean, everything that I would say has already been said, but I will reiterate what Ben said, which is that the shared experience of watching teaching and learning happen in the classroom adds a real context to the conversation that we're having, so that I can turn to one of my partners was Courtney Mack, right? And we were observing 5th grade classrooms, and I could turn to Courtney and we could have a discussion about like, what are you noticing in this classroom? And is it the same thing that I'm noticing in this classroom? And informally, how do you unpack what you're looking at with the teacher, right? If this were an observation and you had to unpack this, how do you unpack this? And so just sort of having had that shared experience and then being able to talk about what we've noticed and noted, and then what our approach would be in having those conversations, if we were going to have them, has been like really, really valuable. I'm really impressed with just sort of the district-wide commitment to teaching and learning that I've seen this year that has been new and refreshing. So.
Thanks, Dr. Fuller.
You're welcome.
Dr. Yannicone, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for the opportunity. First of all, I think I want to thank all the principals, because not only have they engaged in this dialogue with each other and with the assistant principals, but they have managed to put aside any and all fires in order to commit to being in these locations on these days. And that's not an easy thing for principals to do, but they have continually prioritized this as an activity that is valuable, not only to them, but to their colleagues. So that's one thing. A second is that our teaching staff have been unbelievably welcoming, and this was alluded to a few times, but in some districts, this would become a very difficult task because teachers' associations would be resistant to the visitations of people who are not their direct supervisors. And we have had just the opposite. We've had a really welcoming, engaging group of staff who have been happy to have administrators from across the district come in and see what they're doing. And I think that's a tribute to the staff themselves. And then I also want to thank Dr. Johnston, because at the beginning of the year and last summer, she and I had conversations around the idea that in order to improve student outcomes, we need to improve and refine the kinds of feedback we're giving teachers around their classroom instruction. And in order to do that, we have to have common language and common expectations, K through 12. And so I think the greatest impact of all of this work that's being done right now and is continuing to be done next week, as Dr. Markle said, because the team will visit Enfield, is that we are refining and strengthening our practice as administrators in providing supervision that's meaningful and engaging for our teaching staff, not only those who are being observed, but all teaching staff. And the net result of that, as we move forward, will be improved instructional practices that should yield improved student outcomes. So I'm very happy with what we've been doing as an instructional cabinet this year. And I also want to thank the members of the OTL team, Ms. Schrage and Dr. Dennis and Dr. Lutz, because part of the reason why this is working is because our Office of Teaching and Learning Central Office administrators have committed to covering buildings so that there is an administrator on call in the buildings that are not being visited, so that we can do this for 90 minutes once a month. So that it's really a total team commitment, and it's hopefully going to yield some really positive results in the end in student practice and student outcomes. So I'm excited and grateful to the team.
Yeah, and I think exactly as you said, I think there have been some surprises in the way we talk about certain things. And I think we've landed on how can we both simultaneously support teachers in that post-observation conference and really naming some of the practices that they're using and that we're looking for, but also doing that in tangent with everyone else so that we're all working on that together. So I think just this year in general, we have committed to our own instructional leadership, which many of us would agree we probably haven't, other than going to a conference or a workshop, we have never done beyond our retreat and focusing sort of on our leadership practice, but not our instructional, sort of thinking about what are we saying and how are we documenting it and what are we trying, what kinds of questions might we ask to get teachers thinking about engagement and rigor in ways that are helpful to move us forward. So we're really excited about where we've been, and we wanted to share that excitement with all of you just so that you knew sort of what a commitment we had to starting to look at student achievement, not only through a test score they get, but the ways in which we create instructional environments that promote student autonomy, agency, and success. So that's all I had about it. Do you all have questions for us?
I don't have any questions, but I definitely think that briefly this speaks to the safe environment that teachers feel safe. They don't feel that they're in a gotcha environment in regards to having people observe them and give input into their instructional practice. And so I think that definitely comes from the top and just permeates throughout our district, that we are a district where we are transparent, that we're thoughtful, that we're glad to get feedback, and that there's something that needs to be improved or corrected or changed. We're willing to do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the right thing to do. So I just want to say, I just wanted to highlight that that is not apparent in every district, and certainly teachers in some districts would be definitely in the union mode in regards to this, but it just speaks to just the entire climate and the atmosphere of Springfield.
Thanks, Mrs. Green.
I just wanted to say, again, I really like the connectedness of all the administrators. And I thought it was interesting, you know, as a parent, you get to see each building as your child goes through the school district. But I agree, as an administrator, you're in one building, you might not see what came before and you don't get to see what comes after. So I like that everybody's getting that experience to just be aware of what the whole district looks like and also to start using shared language as a group.
Mhm. Thanks, Mrs. Hubley. Anything else? All right. So two other points of order, building principals, you know I love having you here, but I also know that you've had a very busy and full day. Some folks may be having some jet lag from their return from the West Coast, so we're glad Dr. Markle's back with us today. But you all are welcome to stay with us for these last couple agenda items, but I also recognize that you might have other things to do this evening, so feel free to excuse yourselves. Bye, everybody. Thanks. Dr. Yannicone and I just wanted to review with you that a couple of the other items that you'll see in upcoming board meetings. On Tuesday evening, we are prepared to present the school calendars for approval, the revised 24-25 calendar, which we'll talk about in a second, what's different, 25-26 and 26-27. In 24-25, Dr. Yannicone, do you want me to click on them and make them like share them, or just talk about them? Did you have a preference?
Sorry about that. I moved something on my screen to where I would unmute. I think it's okay for you to just summarize them because we actually discussed them in a previous meeting.
Okay.
So
So
I
I
would just
thought,
give
but
the hits.
I don't remember. So 24-25, one of the impacts of the 24-25 calendar was really the discussion from Pennsylvania on the 990 hours of instruction or 180 days. And we have had a notoriously challenging day, which is December 23rd. In which we have lower attendance than many days. We have faculty who have other places they'd like to be. It's been a difficult day. And so what this new calendar for 24-25 reflects is the addition of a virtual professional development day on the 23rd. So the children will not have school, yielding, as we talked about before, 179 days for children next year, still well above our 990 hour requirement, and but maintaining an appropriate number of contracted days for the teaching faculty. So that's the big change in 24-25, and I believe that carries over to 25-26. And then the big change in 26-27 is Labor Day happens to be quite late that year. And so in this proposed calendar in 26-27, we are recommending that we would begin school prior to Labor Day. And so it makes sense in this particular calendar because, as you remember, we surveyed the community a few years ago and folks really wanted to be done earlier in June. And we've been trying to maintain ways to keep the calendar as compacted as we can for families. This I actually, as I've said to Dr. Yannicone as a parent, I think is really helpful because there's so few options for childcare. And so when you talk about school starting so late, families of our youngest children may find themselves burdened on finding appropriate childcare and enabling them to be at work. And so those are the calendars that we anticipate presenting on Tuesday evening with your support. Any questions or concerns?
What is the date that you're talking about? That's so late.
I'll
I
tell you.
can't think that far in the future. I know you guys do, but that seems like a lifetime away.
September 8th, Mrs. Bell, September 8th.
So the proposed date to start would be when?
August 31st.
Ouch. I don't know. I can't imagine starting school in August.
Many of our Montgomery County colleagues often begin their year and that week or even the week before. So we're actually one of the latest to start. So this would be an unusual and new move for us, but it results in us capturing more instructional days earlier into the fall before the fall holidays kick in.
Where does
So
that leave the, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Eileen.
No, I don't know if this was what you were going to ask. What does that mean in terms of the end of the school year?
Yep.
Great question. The last day for students is the 11th, no, 10th of June. I think I'm sharing my screen so you can see it. June 10th, but I couldn't see it through my glasses, which is ironic. June 10th.
Eileen, one of the things I can share with you prior to your arrival to the board, we had surveyed the community about their preferences with regard to school calendar before we started this cycle of doing 3 years in advance. And one of the very, very high priorities for the 700 families who answered that survey, it was a very well responded survey, was that we make sure that the school year ends at the end of the second week of June or earlier. And the reason for that is that there are a number of summer programs and activities that families choose to engage in, whether they are structured like summer camps or whether it's families going on vacations, that they really wanted to be out of the third week of June. And most years we can accomplish that by starting after Labor Day, when Labor Day falls before, on or about the 5th, even the 6th of September. But this is about as late as it can go for Labor Day, being September 8th in this particular year. And so in order to avoid ending on the 19th of June, we end up with this move to start before Labor Day, but very close to, for example, we've had multiple years where we started September 2nd or September 3rd. So by date, it's actually quite consistent with what we've been doing in recent years. In addition to that, because so many school districts in the area do start before Labor Day, athletics that year, I'm led to understand, and if you bring back up that 26, 27 and go to August, I believe that fall sports that year, and I have to move all of our lovely faces.
3rd, I think, August 3rd.
Yes, Monday, August 3rd. And so for families who have students in the athletic programs at the high school, they're going to need to have their kids here the 3rd, and then conceivably wouldn't start until the 8th of September, a full 5 weeks later? 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, 5 weeks later if we started after Labor Day. And so we felt this was a reasonable option. Our Teachers Association strongly supports this. In fact, they'd like us to make it a permanent shift. And we're not committing to that. We only go out 3 years. But many districts use something called the 4-5 rule, where if Labor Day falls on the 4th or earlier, they start after Labor Day. And if it starts on the 5th or later, they start before Labor Day. So it's something for us to consider moving forward. But this date is so late, as Labor Day being the 8th, that we felt it was a good year to test this out and see how it goes.
I understand that. I don't know if it makes a difference or not, if it's, and this may seem silly, but to me, it's just the thought of starting in August. I realize it's the last day of August. To me, August feels like summer, and September always felt like back to school. Like even if I know that's funny, but like even if school started the 1st versus August 31st, to me, and again, it's just one person, it's just my opinion, it feels different. It feels like summer is over.
I understand that.
Okay. I know
I
it sounds
hear ya.
strange, but
I mean, I definitely, I said, ooh, August, but what's the, I guess the kicker for me is that after having done the survey and hearing the voice of the parents, 700 or more that participate in the survey, which is a high number, that the consensus between the parents in the district, that they would like this ability to start earlier and end early. Definitely knowing, having a child that has been in some summer programs and opportunities for that, ending the 3rd week in June really is late, and does sometimes not allow for even that child to be home for at least a week before they run off for activities in the summer or for vacations. There's only about 2 or 3 days before the normal state date. It really is just in the, and I get it, but it really is just in the August, September switch in our minds. So I hear you. But really the voice of the parents definitely want the earlier date.
And there are many private schools in our area that start early and get out early. And then also, just speaking as somebody who is working in a district, and yeah, it's a little bit of a shift having to go back before Labor Day, and change is always hard, but it does, as long as it works out best for our families and our teachers. and allows for the appropriate professional development time and instructional time, then, you know, I would support that.
I will say we did look at that Friday, the 4th. Is that the 4th? Yes. As you know, which way you could go with a 4-day week, but many families go away over that weekend. And so we felt it was more important to get the 4 days in Monday to Thursday and have Friday off. That also matches up better. We have a very high percentage of our high school students who participate in a fall sport. And the athletic contests are overwhelmingly Monday to Thursday rather than Tuesday to Friday. There's always football that Friday night, but beyond that, it tends to be athletics are done by Thursday afternoon because so many families go away that weekend, either Thursday evening or Friday morning. So that was another factor in our minds.
I appreciate the dialogue and discussion, as I know Dr. Yannicone, and so we wanted you to be prepared, having had this discussion in this committee in preparation for the motion for adoption and approval on Tuesday night. All right, I know we are close to time. I just wanted to make sure that you all were caught up, that it is our 3-year approval for flexible instructional days. So we are in the process of preparing a presentation, proposal and application for flexible instructional days for the next 3 years. We are anticipating keeping the same structure that has been effective for us. Districts do have the choice of fully asynchronous, fully synchronous, or a hybrid. We've chosen the hybrid model. We think that's been really successful. We really have gotten good feedback on having one schedule for the entire school district, that all the children go to school basically from 9 to 12 as synchronous and asynchronous in the afternoon. That for families who have children at different ages, they're not trying to navigate different start times. Lets everyone sleep in a little, gets everybody going with some screen breaks that are developmental. So it's a slightly different schedule from 9 to 12. Obviously, more breaks for the youngest children, fewer breaks for the oldest children, and then the afternoon to do as they please. We're going to continue to communicate that to our families when an instructional day like that is happening, as we did this year. And we're going to build on the success. So when we wrote this in 2021, we really didn't know how it would go, but I think we really do have it down to a science. It's working effectively. Our teachers know what's expected. Families have become increasingly familiar, and we've received really positive feedback by those who participated. And so I just wanted to let you know that it will require some action by the board later this spring, but unless there was any concerns, I wanted to hear that before I went too far into the planning and proposal stage and then brought you the ask for approval. Any feedback that I should think about or that you would like me to consider? Okie dokie. Unless I'm unaware, I do not believe that we have any public participants this evening. And so there is no public comment. Is there any other comments from the members of our committee before we wrap up?
I just want to thank you and your staff for all of the work that you put into the curriculum presentation. It's a lot to go through when you're changing curriculum, and just happy to see us moving forward. I think the professional development for teachers is a really amazing and interesting opportunity. The work that you're doing in terms of observing and looking more closely at teaching and learning. So thank you all for the work that you're doing with that.
Thanks, Dr. Teretuski. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I just want to all ditto what Dr. Teretuski offered in regards to thank you for the time and work that went into and goes in all the time to all the projects and proposals so that the presentations are clear to us, and they're always very thoughtful. So thank you very much.
Sure. Ms. Green, did I hear you volunteering yet again as you have quantifiable numbers of meetings left with us? Is that about right?
Yes, I would be honored. Thank you.
I will send you some notes that might be helpful to you if you would like me to.
Oh, yes, please do.
I thought we would agree about that. I did propose, I know that the spring is always a good time and you're never surprised, but I do need another time, some more time with you. We have some course proposals that'll need approval, the flexible instructional day. So we need one more meeting before we conclude the year. I did send you all a tentative hold date saver for May 14th at 5:30. Mrs. Hubley, I'm aware of your possible conflict. I'm hopeful that we will have a short meeting that night. And so, thank you for indulging me on yet another meeting. And, I appreciate all of your time and attention. Thanks so much for your support. I mean, I cannot explain to you, how supportive, the questions are wonderful. They get us thinking, and we always try to guess what kinds of things you'll ask us so that we can be prepared ahead of time. Which keeps us going and make sure that we do a thorough job when we bring you recommendations and requests. So please know I say that with great respect and appreciation for your engagement and real focus in helping us do our best job possible for all of our children and families. And with that, it concludes our meeting for this evening. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much. Take care, everybody.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
night,
Good
everybody.
night,
See you
everybody.
soon.
Bye.